The bank manager leaned across his desk, slid a glass of water toward me, and whispered, "Thomas, your son is standing at the drive-thru window right now with a notary stamp and your dead wife's death certificate. He is trying to liquidate the entire trust." I was 67 years old. My hands froze on my cane. The air in the small bank office suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. "What did you say, Arthur?" I asked, my voice barely carrying over the hum of the air conditioner. Arthur, a man I'd known for 30 years, looked at his computer screen and shook his head. David presented a signed release form. It gives him full authority to close the estate account. The signature looks exactly like yours, Thomas. If I hadn't noticed the date on the notary stamp was tomorrow's date, I would have processed it. A mistake. My son had made a clerical error in his haste to rob me. "Where is he now?" I managed to ask. "Lane 3, Arthur said, pointing toward the drive-thru window. "I told the teller to tell him the system is down for a security update. It bought us 5 minutes. Thomas, what do you want to do? If you say the word, I call the police." I stared through the tinted glass toward the drive-thru lanes. I could see the glint of David's silver SUV. He was tapping his fingers on the steering wheel, completely unaware that his life was about to shatter. But as I looked at the document Arthur had printed out, the panic in my chest turned into a cold, bewildering confusion. The forged signature was perfect. Too perfect. It wasn't a sloppy trace job. It used the exact specific ink I always used, a rare midnight blue fountain pen ink that my late wife Martha used to buy for me from a boutique shop in Chicago. I had that pen locked in my study. Only 2 people had the key. "Don't call the police yet," I told Arthur, my heart hammering. "Let him go. Tell him the transaction requires a 48-hour verification hold." Arthur frowned. "Thomas, that's $500,000, your entire retirement." "I know," I said, standing on shaky legs. "But if he has that ink, he's been inside my house. And if he's been inside my house, he found the lockbox." I drove home in a complete daze, the tires of my old sedan humming against the asphalt. David was 34. He was a successful real estate agent in town, or at least that's what he told me. He lived in a gated community with his wife Jessica. He didn't need my money. He never asked for a dime since he graduated college. Why now? And why use Martha's death certificate as a weapon? When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked perfectly normal. The oak trees were casting long shadows across the porch, but when I unlocked the front door, a strange smell hit me. It smelled like expensive perfume, not Martha's lavender mist, something heavy, toxic. I walked straight to my study. The door was unlocked. I kept that room deadbolted. I pushed the door open, my eyes darting to the vintage oak desk in the corner. The bottom right drawer, the one where I kept my fountain pens, my passport, and the small metal box, was sitting open by an inch. I rushed over, my cane clattering to the floor. I pulled the drawer wide open. The midnight blue ink bottle was sitting on top of a stack of old tax returns. It was uncapped. A tiny smudge of dark blue dried ink stained the wood. But the metal box was still there. My breath caught in my throat. I pulled the box out. It required a 4-digit combination. I spun the wheels to Martha's birth year, 1961. The latch clicked. I opened the lid. The contents inside were untouched. My original will, the house deed, and a thick, yellowed envelope from a private clinic in New Orleans, dated 35 years ago. I opened the envelope. I knew what was inside, but I had to see it. It was a fertility report. Patient, Thomas Vance. Diagnosis, permanent, irreversible oospermia. I couldn't have children. I never could. Martha and I had kept this secret from everyone. When she got pregnant 35 years ago, it was after a brief, painful separation where she had stayed with her sister in Louisiana. When she came back, she told me she was pregnant. She cried, begged for forgiveness, and I forgave her. I loved her too much to let her go. David was raised as my son. He never knew. Nobody knew except me, Martha, and the doctor who had long since passed away. I looked closer at the papers inside the box. There was a fresh fingerprint on the back of the medical report, a smudge of makeup foundation. Someone had read this. Someone knew David wasn't my biological son. Before I could process the terror of that realization, the front doorbell rang. A sharp, demanding ring that echoed through the quiet house. I stuffed the medical papers back into the box, shoved it into the drawer, and walked into the hallway. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I could see a tall figure. It wasn't David. I opened the door. A woman stood there, wearing a sharp gray trench coat and oversized sunglasses. She looked around 40, with a cold, aristocratic face. "Thomas Vance?" she asked. Her voice was smooth, like silk wrapped around a blade. "Yes," I said. "Who are you?" She pulled off her sunglasses, revealing pale blue eyes that looked terrifyingly familiar. "My name is Evelyn Cross. I believe you have something that belongs to my family." My mind spun. Cross. That was the last name of Martha's brother-in-law. The man Martha's sister had been married to 35 years ago. A powerful, wealthy real estate developer who had died in a car crash a decade ago. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to close the door. Evelyn put her leather-gloved hand against the wood, stopping it effortlessly. "Let's not play games, Thomas. Your son, David, has been trying to sell 3 commercial properties, downtown properties that belong to the Cross estate. He thinks because he found out who his real father is, he's entitled to a share of our family fortune." My mind spun. David knows? Of course he knows. Evelyn sneered, her voice dropping to a whisper. "My sister told his wife, Jessica, months ago on her deathbed. Jessica is the one who found your medical report in this very house while you were at church last Sunday. She's the one who copied your signature." The perfume, the makeup on the file. It wasn't David who had breached my sanctuary. It was his wife. "David is desperate, Thomas," Evelyn continued, leaning closer. "His real estate firm is bankrupt. He owes millions to some very bad lenders in Chicago. He needs your retirement fund to pay off his immediate debts so he can stay out of prison long enough to sue my family for his rightful inheritance." "Get off my porch," I whispered, the anger finally bursting through my shock. "I'm leaving," Evelyn said, slipping her sunglasses back on. "But you should know, David signed a confession this afternoon. Jessica told him if he didn't take your money today, she would release the DNA results and the fraud documents to the local news. Your son is a thief, Thomas, but he's a thief because his wife is holding a noose around his neck." She turned and walked down the steps, leaving me alone in the doorway. I didn't wait for 48 hours. I got back into my car and drove straight to David's office. The sign outside read Vance Realty and Development, but the lights inside were mostly dark. The receptionist's desk was empty. I pushed past the double doors and walked down the hallway toward the back office. I could hear voices, arguing, sharp, venomous words. "You missed a digit on the notary stamp, you idiot. The bank flagged it. Now Arthur is holding the funds." "I was nervous, Jess. This is my dad's life savings. If he finds out, it will kill him." "He's not your father," Jessica snapped. The sound of a hand slapping a desk echoed through the walls. "He's an old man who lied to you your whole life. He let you think you were a Vance while the Cross family built an empire with your bloodline's money. We take his $500,000, we clear the Chicago debt, and then we go after Evelyn Cross." I didn't knock. I leaned my weight against the door handle and pushed it open. David was sitting on the edge of his desk, his head in his hands. Jessica stood over him, holding a stack of bank forms. They both froze when they saw me.
David's face turned white. "Dad?" she said. "Don't call me that," I said, my voice steady, though my knees were shaking inside my trousers. "Not because it isn't biologically true, David, but because a son doesn't steal his father's life to pay for his wife's greed." Jessica recovered her composure instantly. She crossed her arms, a cold, mocking smile spreading across her lips. "Well, the old man found out. Saves us the trouble of explaining." "Look, Thomas, let's be realistic. You're 67. You live in a paid-off house. You don't need $500,000. David is facing federal indictment if those Chicago accounts aren't cleared by Friday." I looked at David. He wouldn't look back at me. He stared at the carpet. "Is this true, David? You forged my name for this?" She said it was the only way, Dad. The developers in Chicago, they threatened Lily. They know where she goes to school." Lily, my 7-year-old granddaughter. The anger in my chest suddenly shifted into a sickening horror. This wasn't just a simple family dispute over an inheritance. David had gotten himself involved with dangerous people.
Jessica was using my retirement fund as a shield. "If you don't sign the override form right now, Thomas," Jessica said, pulling a fresh document from her leather portfolio, "I call the Chicago group and tell them David doesn't have the money. They will come for him, and they will come for Lily. Is your pride worth your granddaughter's safety?" They thought they had me cornered. They thought an old, grieving man would naturally break to protect his family, even a family that had betrayed him. But they didn't know everything. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. It was already on a live call. "Did you get all of that, Arthur?" I asked the speaker. Arthur's voice came through the speaker, loud and clear in the quiet office. "Every word, Thomas. The state police investigator is sitting right next to me. We've recorded the entire conversation regarding the extortion and the bank fraud." Jessica's smile completely vanished. She reached for the phone, but I stepped back, raising my cane to block her. "You think you're the only one who can dig up secrets, Jessica," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "I called Marcus before I came here. He's the county registrar. He looked up those commercial properties you tried to sell last month." David looked up, his eyes wide with fear. "What properties?" "Your wife didn't try to sell them to save you from Chicago, David," I said, looking directly into Jessica's panicked eyes. "She already sold them, David. 6 months ago. She used a power of attorney she forced your biological mother to sign before she died. The money isn't in an escrow account. It's in a private offshore account in the Caymans under her maiden name." David stood up, turning to his wife. "What? Jess, you told me—" "The Cross family blocked the sale." "She lied to you, son," I said softly. "She used your financial desperation and your real biological identity to turn you against me, while she prepared to leave the country with millions." Jessica backed away toward the window, her face contorted in rage. "You ruined everything, you old bastard!" The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, growing louder with every passing second as they turned onto the commercial avenue. I didn't stay to see the handcuffs. I walked out of the office before the police cruisers pulled into the parking lot. I stood on the sidewalk, the afternoon sun warming my face, and listened to the sirens stop outside the building. It took a year for the legal dust to settle. Jessica is currently serving an 8-year sentence for grand larceny and wire fraud. David didn't go to prison. My testimony and Arthur's recordings proved he was operating under extreme duress and extortion, but his real estate license was revoked, and his reputation in this town is completely gone. He lives in a small apartment now, working a retail job to pay off his remaining debts. He calls me every Sunday. Sometimes I answer. Sometimes I just let the phone ring while I sit on my porch and watch the wind move through the oak trees. I love him. I will always love him because I raised him. But the trust is gone, and some things can never be rebuilt. I didn't give him the $500,000. Instead, I put it in a protected, locked educational trust for Lily. She is the only innocent person left in this family, and she will be taken care of. I am 67 years old. My house is quiet. The study drawer is locked again, and the midnight blue ink sits untouched. I didn't get revenge. I didn't get my family back. But as I sit here watching the sunset, listening to the birds in the yard, I realized I found something much harder to get. I found peace.